You've been moving through the world for so long now, haven't you? Carrying things that don't belong to you, holding conversations that never quite finished. The day kept asking, and you kept answering, because that's what you do. But tonight, something different waits. There's a place I know, not far from here, though distance doesn't mean what it usually means. The world slows there. Time moves differently, measured not in minutes, but in the gentle crackle of fire, in the soft weight of a sleeping cat, in the way light turns golden when it filters through winter air. A cabin stands in the woods, small and solid, wrapped in silence and snow. Tonight it belongs to you, a place where nothing is required. No decisions to make, no problems to solve. Just the simple permission to rest, to let the day fall away like snow from an overburdened branch, gentle and inevitable and complete. I'm glad you're here. I've been waiting to show you this. The invitation is simple. Close your eyes if you'd like, and follow. We'll walk through snow-covered pines as the last light fades. We'll watch smoke rise from a chimney into the dimming sky. We'll step through a green door into warmth that's been waiting. There will be fire to tend and chocolate to warm. Animals who curl close without words. A book to read by flickering light. This is a story without urgency, without conflict, without anything that pulls or demands. Just the gentle unfolding of an evening in a place where you're completely safe, completely held. Beyond this moment, beyond the noise of today, beyond whatever brought you here seeking rest, there's a threshold waiting. On the other side is softness, the weight of quilts, the warmth of bodies sleeping near, the sound of wind in distant pines while you lie protected and warm. On the other side is permission to simply be, without purpose, without goal, drifting like snow, settling like darkness, releasing into the kind of peace that comes not from solving anything, but from accepting everything. The cold outside and the warmth within, the day that was and the rest that's coming. Let yourself arrive now. Let your breath slow to match the pace of falling snow. Let your body grow heavy against whatever holds you. Bed or chair or floor, it doesn't matter. What matters is that you're here. You've found this quiet corner, and for the next while nothing else exists but the sound of these words and the images they create, and the slow, gentle journey towards sleep. The forest is waiting. The cabin's windows glow warm against the winter dusk. Inside, everything is ready for you. The fire laid, the kettle waiting, the animals already settling into their evening peace. Come, let the story carry you home. The light arrives differently here. It doesn't rush through the trees the way it does in the city, doesn't bounce off glass and metal in 1,000 urgent directions. Here, in this stretch of forest where the pines stand tall and patient, the light moves slowly, filtering through branches heavy with fresh snow. It's the kind of light that seems to have weight, golden and thick, settling over everything like honey poured from a great height. The snow falls in that particular way it only does when the air is perfectly still. Each flake drifting down without hurry, without sound, finding its place on the branches, on the ground, on the narrow path that winds between the trees. You might notice your own breathing matching it, without trying, in, ... and out, like the forest remembering itself. At the end of that path, barely visible through the gentle curtain of falling snow, there's a cabin. It sits alone, as if it has always been alone. A small structure of weathered wood and stone that seems to have grown from the forest floor rather than been built upon it. The roof is blanketed thick with snow, smooth and untouched except where a thin ribbon of smoke rises from the chimney, climbing straight up into the dimming sky. The windows glow softly, a warm amber light that speaks of fire and shelter, of a place held separate from the cold. There are no other lights visible in any direction, no other signs of human presence, just the cabin, the trees, and the snow that continues its slow descent. The world has narrowed to just this, the path ahead, the fading light, the promise of warmth waiting beyond that wooden door. Each step forward makes a soft sound, a gentle compression of fresh snow beneath boots that have walked this path before. The cold touches your face gently, not biting but present. A clean coldness that smells of pine and winter and nothing else. Your breath creates small clouds that hang in the air for a moment before dissolving, and you notice how quiet it is. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of snow falling, which is its own kind of sound if you listen closely enough. A whisper, perhaps, a soft static of crystalline descent. The trees stand as witnesses, their dark trunks striped with white where the snow has gathered on the bark. Some of the branches bow under the weight, creating archways over the path, natural doorways that mark the journey from the forest into the clearing where the cabin waits. The sky above is performing its evening transformation, that brief window between day and night when colors intensify before fading entirely. There are shades of rose and violet painted across the clouds, soft hues that reflect off the snow and make everything seem to glow from within. The sun has already dropped behind the western trees, but its presence lingers in the quality of light, in the way shadows stretch long and blue across the white ground. It's the kind of evening that invites stillness, that asks nothing of you except to move slowly, to notice, to let the day fall away with the same gentle inevitability as the snow. As you draw closer to the cabin, details emerge through the dimness. A stack of firewood covered in snow beside the door. A small window box that will hold flowers in spring but now cradles only white drifts. A railing along the front steps where icicles hang like frozen curtains. The door is painted a faded green, the color of summer moss remembered through winter's lens. Your hand, cold inside its glove, reaches for the handle. Simple iron, worn smooth by use, by other hands in other winters coming home to this same shelter. There's a moment of hesitation, not reluctance, but anticipation. The pause before entering a space that promises warmth and rest after the walk through the cold. The handle turns with a familiar weight. The door opens inward, releasing a breath of warm air that carries with it the scent of wood smoke and something else. Cinnamon, perhaps, or cedar, or simply the smell of a place that has been lived in gently, cared for, quietly. The light from inside spills out onto the snow, golden and welcoming. And beyond the threshold, you can hear the soft crackle of a fire that someone has laid and lit, waiting for this return. The interior of the cabin greets you with a coolness that isn't quite cold, the temperature of a space that has been waiting, holding its breath through the afternoon. The air is still and quiet, undisturbed, and as you close the door behind you, feeling its solid weight shut out the winter evening, the silence inside feels different from the silence of the forest. Here, it's contained, intimate, the silence of walls and roof, of shelter. Your eyes adjust to the dimmer light. The cabin reveals itself in layers. A main room with exposed beams overhead, a stone fireplace that dominates one wall, furniture that speaks of comfort rather than style. There's a small kitchen area visible through an archway, wooden counters worn smooth with years of use. Everything is simple, functional, touched with the patina of time. And at the center of it all, dark and patient, the fireplace waits. You set down what you've carried, a bag perhaps, or simply shed the layers that were necessary outside, but are already too much in here. The movements are automatic, practiced, the small rituals of arrival. Gloves come off first, then the heavy coat, the wool scarf that smells of cold air and pine. Your fingers, slightly stiff from the walk, flex and stretch as warmth begins to return to them. The cabin watches this homecoming with the patience of a space that has seen it many times before, that knows the rhythm of these preparations. You move toward the fireplace, where logs have been laid in waiting. Someone's foresight, perhaps your own from a previous visit. Crossed sticks and crumpled paper arranged in the ancient geometry that invites flame. There's a box of matches on the mantel, long wooden matches that smell of sulfur and promise when you open the box. The first match strikes with a small decisive sound that seems loud in the stillness. The flame catches immediately, burning bright and eager, and you lower it carefully to the paper beneath the logs. Fire is always a kind of magic, the way it transforms, the way it grows. The paper accepts the flame and begins to glow, edges curling and blackening. And then, with a soft sound like an intake of breath, the kindling catches. Small flames lick upward, exploring, finding purchase on the dry wood. You kneel there, watching, as humans have knelt and watched for millennia, mesmerized by this most ancient of companions. The flames grow bolder, reaching higher, and the first quiet crackling begins. Wood speaking as it burns, releasing the sunlight it stored months or years ago. The heat is still small, localized, but already you can feel it on your face. A gentle warmth that promises more to come. You remain there for a moment longer than necessary, watching the fire establish itself, watching the flames find their rhythm. There's something deeply satisfying about this, about creating warmth from cold, light from darkness. The room begins to change around the fire's presence. Shadows animate on the walls, dancing slowly as the flames move. The amber light reaches out, touching the surfaces of things, the worn arm of a chair, the spines of books on a shelf, the smooth curve of a ceramic mug left on a side table. The cabin starts to feel inhabited again, waking from its brief sleep. You add another log, placing it carefully atop the others. The fire accepts it with a shower of small sparks that climb briefly before winking out. The heat is building now, spreading outward in gentle waves, and you can feel the cold retreating to the corners of the room, giving ground slowly but inevitably. As the fire settles into its work, you move through the cabin with quiet purpose, turning on a single lamp that casts a soft pool of light, closing curtains over windows where the darkness is now complete. These small actions feel important, ceremonial even, the transformation of a cold shelter into a warm home. The floorboards creak softly under your feet, familiar sounds that speak of the cabin's age, its solidness. You adjust a cushion on the sofa, straighten a blanket draped over its back, and with each small gesture, the space becomes more yours, more present. The fire has found its voice now, a steady conversation of crackles and pops, and the warmth has begun to fill the room properly, rising up to touch the ceiling beams, spreading into the spaces between things. Outside, the snow continues its patient falling, but in here, the cabin has become what it was always meant to be, a place of refuge, of rest, a small pocket of warmth held safe against the winter night. There's a movement in the corner of your vision, soft and unhurried. And when you turn, you see the cat emerging from wherever cats go when houses are empty and cold. She moves with that particular feline deliberation, each paw placed precisely, as if the floor might have changed in her absence and must be tested anew. Her fur is long and grey, the colour of smoke or morning fog, and it catches the firelight as she crosses the room, creating subtle shifts of shadow and shine along her body. She pauses halfway to the fireplace, sits down with her tail curled neatly around her paws, and regards you with those inscrutable eyes that seem to hold some ancient knowledge they've decided not to share. Then, satisfied with whatever assessment she's made, she continues her journey toward the warmth, toward the place she has claimed as her own in this house of wood and stone. She settles herself on the braided rug that lies before the hearth, circling once, twice, 3 times in that ritual dance that all cats perform before rest. When she finally lowers herself down, it's with a small sigh of contentment that's barely audible, just a soft exhalation that speaks of comfort found. She tucks her paws beneath her chest, becoming a neat loaf of grey fur, and her eyes half close, in that state between waking and sleeping that cats master so perfectly. The firelight plays across her face, catching in her whiskers, and occasionally her ears twitch, listening to sounds too subtle for human hearing, monitoring the cabin's small creaks and settling sounds. There's something deeply peaceful about watching her, about witnessing this small creature's complete surrender to warmth and safety. Her purr begins as a distant rumble, growing steadily louder, a sound like a tiny motor or distant thunder, vibrating contentment into the air around her. The dog announces himself differently, with less subtlety but equal affection. You hear the clicking of nails on the wooden floor first, then see him rounding the corner from what must be a bedroom or hallway beyond. He's large, some mixture of breeds that has resulted in a coat of soft brown and black, ears that flop gently when he moves, and eyes that hold nothing but uncomplicated joy at your presence. His tail wags in broad, sweeping arcs, his whole body seeming to smile as he approaches. Unlike the cat's careful deliberation, the dog's greeting is immediate and full. He presses his head against your leg, leaning his considerable weight into you, asking for the touch that confirms you're real, you're here, you're staying. Your hand finds the warm fur of his head, scratches behind his ears in the spot that makes his back leg twitch slightly, and he leans harder, groaning softly with the pleasure of contact. After a moment of this greeting, the dog seems satisfied and moves toward his own chosen spot. Not as close to the fire as the cat, but near enough. There's a thick cushion on the floor beside an armchair, faded plaid fabric worn soft by his repeated use, and he circles it just once before dropping down with a heavy sigh that sounds almost human in its expression of deep relief. He arranges himself with his head on his paws, facing toward where you stand, keeping watch even as his eyes begin to soften with approaching sleep. His breathing is audible, steady and deep, the peaceful respiration of a creature that knows itself safe. Occasionally his tail thumps against the floor, not with the excitement of greeting now, but with the slower rhythm of contentment, of being exactly where he wants to be. The cat, from her position closer to the flames, ignores him with the dignified disinterest that speaks of long familiarity, of countless days and nights shared in this small space. The thought of something warm to drink arrives gently, not as a craving, but as a quiet recognition of what would feel good in this moment. You move toward the small kitchen, leaving the fire's immediate warmth, feeling the slight coolness of the air in this farther corner of the cabin. The kitchen is simple and well-worn. Open shelves that hold mismatched mugs and plates, a small window above the sink that now shows only darkness and your own faint reflection, a stove that has cooked thousands of simple meals. Everything here speaks of utility and longevity, of objects chosen to last rather than to impress. Your hands know where things are without much thought. The cabinet where the cocoa powder lives in its round tin. The drawer that holds the spoons. The small pot that's perfect for heating milk. These movements feel automatic. A kind of muscle memory that comes from having done this before, perhaps many times, in this same kitchen on other winter evenings. You pour milk into the pot, watching it pool white and smooth at the bottom. Then set it on the stove with a soft metallic sound. The flame catches with a quiet whoosh, blue and steady, and you adjust it down to a gentle heat. Patience is required now, the kind of waiting that's actually restful rather than frustrating. While the milk warms, you open the cocoa tin. It releases a scent that's both bitter and sweet, rich and dark. The smell of comfort distilled. There's sugar too, and a small bottle of vanilla extract with a faded label. And you arrange these ingredients on the counter with the care of someone performing a small ceremony. The milk begins to respond to the heat, tiny bubbles forming at the edges of the pot. Not boiling, but warming. And you watch it with the same attentiveness you gave to the growing fire. There's something meditative about this kind of cooking, where nothing can be rushed, where the transformation happens at its own pace. When the milk is hot enough, steaming gently but not quite simmering, you add the cocoa powder, watching it sit on the surface for a moment before you begin to stir. The spoon moves in slow circles, breaking up the powder, encouraging it to dissolve. And gradually the milk darkens to a rich brown, the color of turned earth or bark or deep water. The steam that rises carries the chocolate scent more fully now, and it mingles with the wood smoke smell that pervades the cabin, creating a combination that speaks directly to something primal and comforting. A spoonful of sugar disappears into the mixture, then a few drops of vanilla, and you continue stirring, watching the small whirlpool form at the center of the pot, the liquid catching the overhead light as it moves. The sounds are quiet, the soft scrape of metal on metal, the gentle bubble of the heating chocolate, your own steady breathing. You've chosen a mug from the shelf, a large one made of thick ceramic, cream-colored with a small chip on the rim that your thumb knows how to avoid. It's heavy in your hand, substantial, the kind of mug that holds heat well and feels good to wrap both palms around. You pour the hot chocolate slowly, watching the dark liquid rise, seeing the slight froth that forms on top. The warmth of it travels through the ceramic almost immediately, and when you lift the mug to your face, letting the steam touch your skin, the heat is gentle and moist. The first sip is careful, testing the temperature, and it's perfect. Hot enough to warm from the inside out, but not so hot that it burns. The chocolate is rich and slightly bitter beneath its sweetness, coating your tongue, traveling down to create a warm path to your stomach. It tastes like winters remembered, like childhood snow days and holiday evenings, like every time you've ever sought comfort in something warm and sweet. Carrying the mug back toward the main room, you feel the weight of it in your hands, the warmth bleeding through to your palms. The dog lifts his head briefly as you pass, interest flickering in his eyes at the possibility of something edible. But he settles again when it becomes clear this isn't for him. The cat remains motionless except for the slow rhythm of her breathing, still perfectly positioned to absorb the maximum heat from the fire. You settle into the armchair, the one with the worn cushions that have molded themselves over years to the shape of people sitting, and arrange yourself comfortably. The mug rests between your hands, heat radiating from it in gentle waves. And you take another sip, slower now, with no purpose but to enjoy the warmth and the taste. Outside, snow continues its patient accumulation on the roof, on the trees, on the silent ground. But here, in this circle of firelight, with a warm drink between your palms, the cold feels distant and abstract. Something that exists elsewhere, in another world entirely. There's something about being warm that makes you want to witness the cold. To feel the contrast between inside and outside, between shelter and weather. With the mug still cradled in your hands, you move toward the front door, wrapping a blanket around your shoulders as you go. Not because you'll be truly cold, but because the gesture feels right, necessary to this particular ritual. The door opens with a soft creak, releasing you into the covered porch where the air is sharp and clean, where the temperature drops noticeably but not unbearably. The porch is protected, roofed and partially walled, creating a threshold space that belongs neither fully to the cabin nor to the wild forest beyond. There's a chair here, a wooden rocker with a faded cushion, positioned to face outward toward the trees, and you settle into it slowly, feeling it shift slightly beneath your weight, beginning the gentle back and forth motion that's built into its design. The world before you is transformed by darkness and snow into something almost abstract, a study in limited tones and soft edges. The trees are dark vertical lines against the white ground, their branches holding accumulated snow that makes them seem fuller, softer than they do in summer. The snow is still falling, and from this vantage point you can see it more clearly, each flake visible for a moment as it passes through the dim light that reaches from the cabin's windows, then disappearing into the general whiteness below. There's no wind, which means the snow falls straight down, unhurried, each flake following its own path through the air, landing without sound. The forest floor is already deeply covered, smooth and unmarked except where the dark shapes of low bushes or fallen logs create subtle disruptions in the white expanse. Everything is muffled, softened. The world wrapped in this blanket of continuous gentle fall. You rock slowly, the chair creaking in a rhythm that's almost musical, and raise the mug to your lips. The chocolate is still hot, still releasing steam into the cold air, and drinking it here, in this transitional space between warm and cold, makes it taste somehow richer, more necessary. The heat travels down your throat while cold air touches your face, and the two sensations exist together without cancelling each other out. Your breath creates clouds that hang briefly before dissipating, joining the general movement of air and snow and steam. The blanket around your shoulders holds your body's warmth close, creating a small cocoon of comfort, and you settle deeper into it, into the chair, into this moment of watching. There's nothing to do here, no purpose to fulfill, just the simple act of sitting, of witnessing the snow's patient work, of being present to the evening as it deepens into night. Time moves differently in the presence of falling snow. Minutes might be passing, or hours. It becomes difficult to tell, and the difficulty doesn't matter. The snow continues its descent with absolute consistency, each flake a small repetition of the last, building the white layers slowly, incrementally, with the kind of patience that only nature possesses. Occasionally you can hear small sounds, a branch releasing its burden of snow with a soft hump, a settling sound from the cabin behind you, the tiny whisper of flakes landing on the porch roof above, but mostly there's silence. The particular silence of snowfall that isn't really silence at all, but rather the sound of millions of small arrivals happening simultaneously, too quiet individually to be heard, but creating together a kind of presence, a soft static that fills the air. Your eyes trace the path of individual flakes sometimes, following one down until it lands, or until you lose it against the white ground, then finding another and following it in turn. The forest stands in witness, dark and patient, each tree holding its own small accumulation of white. There's a depth to the darkness between the trees, a sense of space extending back and back into distances you can't see, where more trees stand and more snow falls in perfect privacy, unseen and unseeable. But here, in this small sphere of dim light reaching from the cabin, you can see enough. The immediate trees, the clearing, the gentle perpetual motion of descent. The cold begins to find its way through the blanket after a while, not uncomfortable but present, a reminder that this is borrowed time, that warmth waits inside, that eventually you'll need to return to the fire, but not yet. For now, there's the rocking chair's slow rhythm, the warm mug growing gradually cooler in your hands, the snow falling like a meditation, like a prayer, like the gentlest possible reminder that the world continues its ancient patterns whether we watch or not. And sometimes, just sometimes, it's enough to simply watch, to bear witness, to let the beauty of it settle into your bones like the cold, like the warmth, like the peace that comes from knowing you're exactly where you're meant to be. The impulse to walk arrives quietly, not as restlessness, but as a gentle pull toward movement, toward being inside the forest rather than simply observing it from the porch's edge. You finish the last of the chocolate, now lukewarm but still sweet, and return inside to prepare. The warmth of the cabin embraces you immediately, and the animals look up briefly, the dog's tail giving a single optimistic wag at the possibility of adventure, the cat merely blinking slowly before returning to her determined rest. You layer yourself carefully, pulling on the heavy coat again, wrapping the scarf around your neck, tugging a knit hat down over your ears. Your hands find gloves, and your feet settle into the boots that are still slightly warm from before. These preparations feel important, almost ceremonial, the ritual of armoring yourself gently against the cold, of creating a portable warmth to carry into the winter evening. The door opens onto a world that has grown darker in the time you've been inside. Though not fully dark, the snow creates its own subtle illumination, reflecting what little light remains in the sky, making the forest visible in shades of grey and blue and deepest charcoal. Your boots meet the snow on the porch steps, compressing it with that particular soft crunch that fresh snow makes, a sound that's satisfying in some deep, inexplicable way. Each step down is careful, deliberate, and then you're standing in the clearing before the cabin, surrounded by the gentle fall that hasn't paused, hasn't changed its rhythm. The forest waits ahead, the path visible as a narrow corridor between trees, slightly less white than the surrounding woods where your earlier footprints have already been softened and partially filled by the continuing accumulation. You begin walking, moving into that corridor, letting the trees close around you on either side. The forest at this hour, in this weather, feels like a different place entirely from the forest of daylight. The familiar becomes strange and beautiful, every branch and trunk transformed by its coating of white, every shadow deepened by the gathering dark. You walk slowly, placing each foot with care. Though the path is clear enough, it's more that speed seems wrong here, inappropriate to the mood of hushed stillness that pervades everything. The snow falls on your shoulders, on your hat, catching in the loose weave of your scarf, and you can hear it landing on the leaves and branches around you. Not hear it exactly, but sense it. The way you can sense rain even when each individual drop is too quiet to register. Your breath creates rhythmic clouds that trail behind you as you walk, and the cold air entering your lungs feels clean and sharp, tasting of pine and winter and purity. The trees stand as silent witnesses to your passage, each one distinct if you look closely. This one with bark that peels in long strips, that one with a branch broken and hanging at an angle, another with what might be the entrance to some small creature's den at its base. The pines are darkest, holding their needles through winter, while the bare deciduous trees create more delicate patterns against the sky, their branches reaching upward in complex geometries that the snow emphasizes, tracing each limb in white. Occasionally you pause, not because you're tired, but because something catches your attention. The particular way snow has gathered in the crook of a branch, creating a small sculpture of natural grace, or the sound of something moving in the underbrush, some animal going about its evening business, unseen but present. The forest is not empty, you realize, but full of life that continues regardless of your witness, full of small dramas and quiet survival, all of it happening beneath the patient accumulation of snow. The path curves gently, following the natural contours of the land, and you follow it without question, trusting its guidance through the darkening woods. Time becomes elastic here, stretched or compressed. You might have been walking for 5 minutes or 20, and either seems equally possible, equally true. What matters isn't duration, but the quality of the experience, the way each moment contains its own completeness. The cold is more present now, finding its way through the layers despite your preparations, touching your cheeks, the tip of your nose, reminding you that you're a warm creature moving through a cold world, that eventually you'll need to turn back, and so you do, finding a wide place in the path where turning is easy, and you begin the return journey, retracing your steps which are already beginning to fill with fresh snow. The cabin, when it comes into view through the trees, glows like a promise, its windows bright with the fire's light, smoke still rising from the chimney in a thin, steady line, and the sight of it creates a feeling in your chest that might be relief or gratitude or simply the deep satisfaction of knowing that warmth and shelter wait, that the walk through the cold has a destination, an ending that will be soft and safe and exactly what you need. The cabin welcomes you back with that same rush of warm air, carrying with it the scent of wood smoke and the subtle mustiness of old wood, familiar and deeply comforting after the clean coldness of the forest. Your hands move automatically to shed the outer layers, boots kicked off gently at the door, coat hung on its peg, gloves set aside to dry, scarf unwound from around your neck and draped over a chair back. Each piece removed feels like a small liberation, a return to ease, and beneath the winter gear your body feels lighter, grateful for the lessening of weight. The dog rises from his cushion to greet you again, his tail wagging with the same enthusiasm as before, as if you've been gone for days rather than minutes. You run your hand along his back, feeling the warmth of him, and he leans into the touch before circling once and returning to his spot. The cat hasn't moved at all, still curled in her perfect circle before the fire, but one ear flicks in your direction. Acknowledgement, perhaps, or simply awareness that you've returned to the small universe of this cabin. The fire has burned down somewhat in your absence, the flames lower now, more coals than active blaze, and you add another log, watching it settle into place with a small shower of sparks. The wood catches quickly, encouraged by the deep bed of hot coals beneath it, and within moments the flames are climbing again, casting their dancing light across the room's surfaces. But your attention has already shifted to the practical matter of hunger, that gentle emptiness that asks to be filled, and you move back toward the kitchen with purpose, softened by the evening's slowness. The light here seems dimmer after the brightness of the fire, and you reach for the small lamp on the counter, clicking it on to cast a warm pool of illumination over your workspace. The kitchen reveals itself again, simple, functional, holding exactly what's needed and nothing more. You open the refrigerator, a small unit that hums quietly, and consider what feels right for this kind of evening. Soup seems like the answer. Something simple that can be prepared without much thought, that will warm from the inside the way the fire warms from without. There's a can on the shelf, tomato soup, classic and unpretentious, and you retrieve it along with a pot. A can opener that turns with satisfying clicks. A wooden spoon worn smooth with use. The soup slides into the pot with a soft glop, thick and deeply red, and you add milk to thin it slightly, stirring as the mixture begins to warm over low heat. While it heats, you slice bread, thick slices from a good loaf, the kind with a substantial crust and soft interior, and spread butter across each piece with long, even strokes. The butter is cold enough that it doesn't melt immediately, sitting in yellow streaks on the bread's surface, and you set the slices on a plate with care, arranging them just so, as if presentation matters even when there's no one to see but yourself. Perhaps, especially then, you think, perhaps the small courtesies we extend to ourselves matter most. The soup begins to release steam, thin wisps rising from the pot surface, and you stir it slowly, watching the circular motion, the way the color deepens as it heats. The kitchen fills with the scent of tomatoes and milk and warmth, a smell that's both simple and deeply satisfying, tied to 1,000 memories of simple meals, of comfort found in basic sustenance, when it's hot enough, bubbling gently at the edges but not quite boiling. You pour it carefully into a wide bowl, ceramic and hand-glazed, its surface irregular and beautiful in its imperfection. The bread goes onto the plate beside the bowl, and you carry both to the small table near the window, where candles wait in their holders. A match strikes, flames catch, and suddenly the kitchen glows differently, softer, more intimate. The candles flicker slightly in some imperceptible draft, creating shadows that move gently across the walls, and you sit down facing the dark window where your reflection looks back at you, faint and ghostly, overlaid on the blackness beyond. The first spoonful of soup is almost too hot, requiring patience. A small cooling breath blown across its surface before it can be sipped. The taste is exactly what it should be: sweet tomato, creamy milk, salt and subtle herbs. Nothing complex, but entirely satisfying. You eat slowly, methodically, tearing pieces from the buttered bread and dipping them into the soup, watching them darken with absorbed liquid before bringing them to your mouth. There's no hurry, no clock dictating the pace of this meal, and so you let it unfold at its own rhythm, interspersed with pauses to simply sit, to look at the candlelight reflected in the window, to listen to the fire crackling in the next room and the soft sounds of the animals at rest. This is sustenance, yes, but it's also ritual, the daily act of feeding yourself transformed into something closer to meditation by the simple addition of attention, of presence, of gratitude for warmth and food and shelter while the snow continues its patient work outside, building its layers in the darkness, covering the world in white silence while you sit here, safe and fed, In this small circle of light, the meal finished and the dishes washed and set aside to dry, you find yourself drawn back to the fire's warmth, to the main room where the flames have settled into a steady burn, neither urgent nor dying, but sustained in that perfect middle state that seems like it could last forever. The armchair waits where it has always waited, positioned at the ideal angle to receive both warmth and light, its cushions bearing the gentle depressions of countless evenings spent exactly like this one. You settle into it with a soft exhalation, feeling your body release the last remnants of the day's small tensions. And immediately the cat stirs from her position on the floor. She rises, stretches in that elaborate feline way, front legs extended, back arched, tail pointing straight up, then approaches with deliberate steps, leaping onto your lap with surprising lightness for a creature of her size. She circles once, kneading with her paws against your thigh in that ancient gesture that speaks of kittenhood and contentment, then settles herself into a warm coil, purr already rumbling. The dog, not to be left out entirely, shifts his position on his cushion so that his large head rests against your foot, his body pressed against the chair's base, creating a circuit of contact and warmth. You're anchored now by these small creatures, held gently in place by their trust and their need for proximity. And something about this arrangement feels deeply right. As old as the first humans who invited wolves to their fires, as timeless as the bond between species who have chosen each other. Your hand finds the cat's head automatically, fingers scratching behind her ears, and she pushes into the touch. Purr intensifying, the room holds you all in its embrace. Fire, human, cat, dog. A small constellation of warm-blooded life against the winter night. And within arm's reach on the side table, there's a book, its cover worn and spine creased from previous readings, waiting to be opened again. The book is old, not ancient but well-loved, its pages slightly yellowed at the edges, that particular color that paper becomes when it has been handled often and stored carefully. You lift it with your free hand, the other still resting on the cat's warm back, and open it to where a faded ribbon marks your place. The text reveals itself in the firelight, lines of print that dance slightly in the flickering illumination, words that require focus but not strain to read. It's a story you've visited before, which makes it perfect for an evening like this, when what you want isn't surprise or shock, but the comfort of familiar narrative, the pleasure of recognition. The sentences unfold at their own pace, descriptive and unhurried, and you read them slowly, sometimes pausing mid-paragraph to simply sit with a particular image or phrase, letting it settle before continuing. The protagonist is walking through rain in a city you've never visited but can see clearly through the writer's careful attention to detail, cobblestones, street lamps, the smell of whetstone and distant bread. Time dissolves into the rhythm of reading, that particular state where you're both present in your body, aware of the cat's weight, the fire's heat, the chair's support, and simultaneously transported into the world of the narrative, walking alongside characters through their invented landscapes. The fire pops occasionally, sending up brief showers of sparks, and each time the sound pulls you momentarily back to the cabin, to the physical reality of wood and flame and winter, before you slip once more into the book's current. Your eyes trace the lines, left to right, down the page, occasionally glancing up to give them a moment's rest, looking into the fire or at the cat's peaceful face, her eyes closed in complete contentment. The dog sighs heavily in his sleep, a sound of such profound satisfaction that it makes you smile. These small moments of awareness punctuate the reading, grounding it, making it more rather than less real. The pages turn with soft whispers, and gradually you realize you're reading more slowly, the words taking longer to resolve into meaning. Your attention drifting more frequently from the narrative to the warmth that surrounds you, to the gentle weight of the sleeping cat, to the fire's hypnotic movement. The book is good, the story engaging, but it's competing now with the simple pleasure of rest, with the deep satisfaction of stillness. You read to the end of a chapter, a natural stopping place, and close the book gently, marking your place once more with the ribbon. The cat stirs slightly at the movement, but doesn't wake, merely adjusts her position to maintain maximum contact and warmth. Outside, though you can't see it from here, the snow continues falling through the darkness, adding to the accumulated depth, building the layers that will remain until spring arrives months from now. But here, in this room, in this chair, with these quiet companions and the fire's steady burn, spring seems impossibly distant and entirely unnecessary. This moment is complete in itself, asking nothing, promising nothing, simply existing in its own perfect sufficiency. And you sink deeper into the chair's embrace, letting the book rest on the arm, your hand returning to the cat's warm fur, eyes half closed, content to simply sit and breathe and be. Eventually, the body asks for more than stillness, calls quietly for the kind of comfort that comes from heat and water, from the ritual cleansing that marks the day's end. You stir carefully, mindful of the cat who protests softly as you lift her gently and set her on the cushion you've vacated. She circles twice before settling again, already half back to sleep before her head touches down. The dog barely registers your movement, lost in whatever dream makes his paws twitch slightly against the floor. You stand slowly, feeling the pleasant stiffness of having sat too long in one position, and stretch with your arms overhead, vertebrae realigning with small pops and releases. The fire has burned low again, down to glowing coals that pulse with deep orange light, and you bank it carefully, adjusting the logs so they'll burn slowly through the night. Then begin the journey toward the stairs that lead to the cabin's upper level. The stairs are narrow and steep, each step creaking under your weight with sounds that are familiar as old songs, and your hand trails along the wooden banister worn smooth by countless previous climbs. The upper floor is cooler than below, the heat from the fire not reaching this far with the same intensity, and you feel the temperature change on your skin as you reach the landing. There are 2 rooms up here, a bedroom and a small bathroom, and you move toward the latter, flicking on the light switch to reveal a space that's compact but sufficient. The bathtub is old-fashioned, deep and clofeted, its porcelain surface slightly crazed with age, but clean and inviting. You lean down to fit the rubber plug into the drain, then turn the hot water tap, and after a moment's hesitation, the pipes clearing themselves water begins to flow, steaming immediately in the cooler air. The sound of running water is one of the most comforting sounds there is, a constant rush that fills the small room, and you watch the level rise slowly in the tub, steam climbing in visible clouds toward the ceiling. While the bath fills, you move through the small preparations, lighting a candle on the shelf above the sink, its flame adding softer light to the room's harsh overhead bulb, opening the window just a crack to let in a thread of cold air that will keep the space from becoming stifling. The mirror above the sink begins to fog at its edges, the glass slowly obscuring your reflection, turning you into something indistinct and dreamlike. You test the water's temperature with your hand, adjusting the taps to find that perfect point between hot and hotter, adding cold in small increments until it feels exactly right. Hot enough to pink the skin, but not to burn. Hot enough to sink into and feel the muscles release their hold. When the tub is full enough, you turn off the taps, and the room falls into relative silence. Just the small sounds of water settling, of steam rising, of your own breathing. You undress slowly, draping clothes over the towel rack, and the cooler air touches your skin briefly before you step into the tub, one foot and then the other, lowering yourself carefully into the heat. The water accepts you with small waves that lap against the porcelain sides, and you slide down until you're submerged to your shoulders, head resting against the tub's curved back. The heat is immediate and overwhelming in the best possible way, soaking into muscles you didn't realize were tense, traveling through skin and tissue to touch something deeper. Your eyes close involuntarily, and a sound escapes your throat. Not quite a sigh, not quite a moan, just an exhalation of pure physical relief. The water holds you in its liquid embrace, and you let yourself float in that space between waking and something deeper, awareness narrowing to pure sensation. The heat, the slight pressure of water against every surface of submerged skin, the way your body feels simultaneously heavy and weightless. Steam continues to rise around you, condensing on the walls, on the window where it mingles with the cold air seeping in through the crack, creating small rivulets that trace downward paths through the fog. Time becomes irrelevant again, measured only by the gradual cooling of the water, by the slow pink fading from your skin. Your fingers prune slightly, and you study them with detached interest. These familiar appendages made strange by immersion. Occasionally you shift position slightly, creating small currents, or you cup water in your hands and pour it over your shoulders, over your head, feeling it cascade down in warm streams. The candle flame flickers in the moisture-heavy air, creating moving shadows, and outside the cracked window you can hear, very faintly, the wind that has finally arrived, moving through the pines with a sound like distant ocean waves. But here, in this small room, in this porcelain vessel filled with heat, you are insulated from wind and cold and all demands, existing only as a body receiving comfort, being cared for in the simplest and most essential way, preparing for the final transition into sleep that waits just ahead. Patient as the snow, gentle as the night. The water has cooled enough that leaving it feels less like abandonment and more like natural progression. The next step in this evening's gentle sequence. You rise slowly from the tub, water streaming from your body, and reach for the towel that hangs within arm's reach. Thick terry cloth, slightly rough against skin made sensitive by heat and immersion. The air feels sharp in contrast to the bath's warmth, raising small bumps along your arms and legs. But the towel's friction creates its own heat as you dry yourself with methodical care, each part attended to, each drop absorbed, until you're standing on the bath mat with damp hair and skin that still holds the memory of heat. The mirror has fogged completely now, obscuring everything, turning the room into something soft-edged and dreamlike. You wrap yourself in a robe that hangs on the door's hook, soft flannel worn thin in places, its belt tied loosely around your waist, and blow out the candle with a single breath, watching the smoke curl upward in the darkness before you open the door and step into the hallway. The bedroom is just across the narrow hall, and you enter it as you've entered it countless times before, your feet knowing the path even in the dim light that reaches up from the fire below. This room is smaller than the main living space, dominated by the bed that sits against the far wall beneath the window curtained now against the night. The bed is simple. An iron frame, a thick mattress, quilts and blankets layered for warmth, but it looks infinitely inviting in this moment, a haven waiting to receive you. There's a small lamp on the bedside table, and you switch it on to cast a pool of amber light across the pillows, across the white sheets that you'd smoothed this morning in another lifetime, when the day was new and full of different light. Now the day is ending, releasing you into rest, and you move through the final preparations with the same deliberate slowness that has characterized the entire evening. Pajamas wait folded on a chair, soft cotton pants and a long-sleeved shirt, both worn to perfect softness by many washings. You shed the robe and dress in these sleep clothes, feeling their familiar comfort settle against your skin. The room is cool enough that you're grateful for the coverage, for the layer between yourself and the air. You can hear, from downstairs, the subtle sounds of the animals moving, the dog's nails clicking briefly on the floor, the cat's small mew, both of them likely wondering about your absence, possibly making their own preparations for night. But they'll be fine down there by the fire's remnants, in their chosen spots, keeping each other company in that wordless way that animals do. Up here, you have your own rituals to complete, your own territory to settle. You turn down the bed's covers, folding back the quilt and blankets and top sheet to reveal the smooth expanse of bottom sheet, slightly cool to the touch, waiting to be warmed by body heat. The moment before getting into bed carries its own particular quality, a threshold that once crossed leads inevitably towards sleep. You stand there for a breath, looking at the prepared bed, at the way the lamplight catches in the folds of fabric, and feel gratitude rise up unbidden. For this shelter, for this comfort, for the simple, profound gift of a safe place to rest. Then you're lifting the covers and sliding beneath them, feeling the sheets cool against your legs, feeling the pillows accept your head's weight, and you're arranging yourself into sleeping position with the automatic movements of someone who has slept in this same bed many times before. Your body knows exactly how to lie, which side to favor, how to position your arms and legs for maximum comfort. The covers settle over you with satisfying weight, not too heavy but substantial enough to feel like protection, like embrace, and you reach out to turn off the lamp, plunging the room into darkness broken only by the faint glow that seeps up from below. In the darkness, other senses sharpen. You can hear the wind outside more clearly now, moving through the trees with that rushing sound. Though the cabin feels solid around you, unmoved and unmovable, you can hear, very faintly, the creak of stairs as one of the animals, the dog, by the weight of the sound, begins to climb toward this upper level. There's a pause at the landing, then the soft padding of paws entering the room, and you feel the bed shift as he jumps up, circling once before settling himself at your feet, his warmth immediately noticeable through the covers. A moment later, lighter steps announce the cat's arrival, and she leaps up with more grace, treading carefully across the blankets before curling herself into the curve behind your knees. And now you're all here, all accounted for. 3 warm creatures arranged on this bed, in this room, in this cabin, while the snow continues falling outside, while the fire glows below, while the night deepens and spreads and holds the world in its quiet grasp. Your breathing slows to match the animals' rhythms, and your eyes grow heavy behind closed lids. The night settles fully now, wrapping itself around the cabin like another blanket, like another layer of warmth. The fire below has burned down to embers that glow soft and patient, asking nothing, giving what heat they can. The animals sleep, their deep animal sleep, trusting completely in the shelter, in the warmth, in the safety of this small wooden haven surrounded by snow and silence. Outside, the forest stands in its winter stillness, each tree holding its burden of white, each branch patient under the weight. The snow may still be falling. It's impossible to know from here, wrapped as you are in darkness and covers and the approaching edge of sleep. But it doesn't matter. Whether it falls or pauses, the world will continue its quiet work, and you are held separate from it, protected, allowed to rest. There's nothing more required of you tonight. No task left undone that can't wait for morning. No thought that needs thinking. No worry that won't keep until daylight returns and you're ready to meet it. For now, there's only this, the weight of blankets, the warmth of sleeping creatures near your feet, the slow rhythm of your own breathing growing deeper, slower, matching the pace of rest that the whole cabin has fallen into. Your body knows what to do from here. It remembers how to let go, how to soften, how to drift. Each breath carries you further from waking, further into the soft darkness that asks nothing, that only receives. The edges of thought blur and fade, and in their place comes something gentler, something without words or shape, just the deep knowing of safety, of shelter, of being exactly where you need to be. The cat's purr continues, a distant motor, a vibration of contentment that travels through the blankets and into your bones. The dog's breathing synchronizes with yours, in and out, a shared rhythm of rest. And beneath it all, beneath the small sounds and the deeper silence, there's the cabin itself, solid and patient, holding you through the night, keeping the cold at bay, keeping watch while you release into sleep's embrace. Final blessing, the story steps back now, releases you, lets you cross over into sleep at your own pace, in your own time, with no rush and no resistance. I'm glad you came here tonight. I'm glad you let yourself rest. If you'd like more nights like this one, more quiet forests and gentle fires, more stories that ask nothing but offer everything, they're here waiting for you. A new journey each week, a place to return when the world feels too loud, when rest feels too far away. Stay with us in these quiet corners. Let the stories carry you home, again and again, as many times as you need. But for now, for tonight, just rest. Let yourself drift like snow, settle like darkness, release into the deepest, softest sleep. The cabin will stand through the night, the fire will hold its warmth, and you are safe. You are held. You are exactly where you need to be. Your breathing deepens, your body yields, and sleep, patient and kind, gathers you close. Sleep well, sleep deep. Until we meet again in another quiet place, be gentle with yourself and rest, sleep.